Hello, good morning. Today's video, it's been a while, but today's video I've entitled A Tale of Two Guns. Both of these guns look very similar. Both of these guns were used in World War I, but both of them are also different. Today's video I'm going to describe the rifles, the history, and I'm also going to talk about the differences between the two. Now, for those of you that are very familiar with these guns, the bottom rifle is the British Enfield P-14, and the top one is the US Model 1917. So let's get down and find out what's going on here. Good morning. Like I said, this is a video that I'm calling A Tale of Two Guns. Okay, the two guns are the British Enfield P-14 and the American Model 1917, also called the Enfield 1917, I guess, because it's so similar. Both of my rifles are similar in appearance and function. They were both made in 1917. I'm assuming that the P-14 was made in early 1917 and the P-17 was made later on in 1917. They're both made by Remington, and we'll talk a little bit about the history of the P-14. The P-14 came about because after the Second Boer War that the British were fighting in wherever the Boer War was fought. I really don't know anything about the Boer War. I probably ought to read up on it and see what's going on. But anyway, they were using their 303s, and the Boers were using Mausers. They were using the 7mm Mausers, the 1893, 1895. The Mausers could shoot further, they were a smaller round, and they were more accurate. So the British said, well, we need to do something about that. So what they did was they got together, all the people that know what to do there in England, and what they came up with was a different round, the 276 round. I think the round itself was a little bit, the bullet itself was a little bit smaller, but the round itself was bigger. So what you had then, it's, well, smaller in diameter anyway than the 303. They called it their Magnum round, and they were testing it, and they said, well, we need a new gun to shoot it from because it won't fire out of the old guns. So they came up with the P-13. The P-13 was an experimental gun. They made somewhere around 1,000, or maybe it was exactly 1,000 of them, and they were testing them. Well, the testing wasn't going well, and then it even went even less well once the war started, because all of a sudden England was in the war. England was in the war. Actually, it wasn't all of a sudden. But anyway, so they got in the war, and they said, we need guns for the war. So they said, well, we're really not doing well with this, so what we got is a whole bunch of 303 ammo. So what we need to do is retrofit these 13s so that they'll fit, or that style, so that they can fit the 303 round in it. So that, call that the P pattern. British use P for pattern. We use M for model. It's just Chinese, or the Japanese use T for type, and Chinese use T for type, and it's just one of those things. So anyway, what they came up with was this here, as you saw the pictures of it. This is the P-14. Now the P-14 fires a 303 round, and it has a 5-round magazine, an internal magazine, and it has the magazine floor. It's a modified Mauser. A lot of it is a lot like the Mauser, but everybody was copying the Mausers, and including our 1903 was kind of a Mauser copy. And what? So anyway, it was such a good gun, people decided that they were going to start using it. Anyway, side note. So when they decided that they were going to use these guns, there's I looked it up, and it's the place called Vickers was making them, and the P-14s, but they weren't making enough of them, certainly, to keep up with the war. So they asked the United States to come through and see if what we could do about manufacturing some for them. So we got Remington, Winchester, and Eddington, which is also a subsidiary or whatever of Remington. But they decided they were going to put these rifles together for them. So they started building these rifles, and then the problem came up. They realized that each manufacturer was manufacturing the rifles different, slightly different than the other people, which means that the parts weren't always interchangeable across all three versions. So what they started doing was they started putting initials on the parts. Like this is later on, and they continue to do it, but this is a Remington. On my bolt, it has an R. On the bolt parts, it has R's, so it's a Remington gun. So, but they could have, the reason they did that was because if you had a Remington gun and you needed parts, you'd go to Remington Parts to get the parts. Well, finally, in 1916, the British decided that they were going to accept the guns as they are. So what they did was they took the guns and they were using them, the early ones, they were using for their home guard and so on and so forth. And what they were doing, what they did with those was they stamped DP on them, which is for drill purposes only. Didn't mean there was anything necessarily wrong with the guns. It just meant that to differentiate between that and the ones that all matched. The guns got out too late for the war. They really didn't get used for the war because it was really too late to switch them all over for all of their sources. So they continued to use the Mark IIIs, the #1 Mark IIIs, the Mark IIIs, so forth. So except for the ones that were made at Winchester, Winchester made exceptional, the British felt made exceptional barrels and guns, and they decided they used those for sniper rifles. So the P-14, most of the use that it got was as sniper rifles made by Winchester. I don't have one of those. Anyway, so let's, I'm trying to think here, I put down numbers here, but I don't know where the numbers are. Anyway, I had numbers of how many were manufactured, but there was 1 point something million of them manufactured until 1917, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What it's got is it's got the steel butt plate. Inside the butt plate, like many others, damn, it's got a good spring on it. It's got the cleaning kit. The British cleaning kit consisted of the oil can, the oiler, and screws. If they had any scratches or whatever to their guns, they could use this here and put oil on them. Anybody that has a bunch of coats of linseed oil on their rifles knows that if you get a scratch on it, a lot of times you leave it alone, it'll just seal back up again. But this is to put on there. Has a piece of line with a weight on it. Take and put this down the muzzle. It goes down in here. You connect a screen or a loop or whatever else you want to. Pull it through, drop it down, pull it through, and that's how we do it. They didn't have the rods the cleaning rods to do that with. Okay. Unit identification disc. This is not the disc that came with this stock. This is this had a one on it here. I don't know what I did with it, but anyway, it was a different one. I put one with Arab writing on it, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. Here you have on this side, you have your safety. So when you safety on. Safety on, safety off, Safety on, safety off. Okay. Okay, so then this is the cover for the rear sight. You have your rear sight here, pops up. It's got this here. I think it goes out to what, 1,800 yards. And here's your bolt arm, and you can see that it's at it's bent. And you say, why is it bent? Look where it comes right out as. So when you're using it, push it in. Without ammo in it, it's kind of hard. So you push it in, and look at that. You're right there. And you can pull it back out again. Okay. So there you go. So that's that. It goes up here. You got your band. You got your other band, your swivel, and your front sight with its front sight guard. Now, I know that this is a Mark 1. This is the P-14 Mark 1. And what they did was they made some changes. What they did was they changed the bolt, the lugs on the bolt. They made them stronger. And part of the reason that they made them stronger was it's much more accurate and other things that have to do with the mechanics of a gun. The other thing that they did, and is, well, I don't know if you can see it or not. Probably can't. But on here, there's a star. On the bolt thing, there's a star. On the barrel, there's a star. That means that it's a Mark 1. One of the other things that they did with the Mark 1, and those that are diehard P-14 fans are going to hate this, but I have volley sights. The volley sights, there's one up here, and this one here rotates around and it comes down, and it's used for shooting up high for volleys. The reason I say people are going to go crazy is because they took those off in 1916. The stock came with it on them, with a place on there for them. So a lot of the stocks, they just took them off and left the holes and stuff like that. So I always wanted volley sights, and I know it's not completely accurate, but I put the volley sights on here just because I think they're pretty cool. So if you want to write me and tell me, that's fine. I'm just telling you that's why I did it. So that is the P-14. Now, the 1917 looks pretty close, looks pretty much exactly the same. What happened was in 1917, we were getting ready to enter the war, and what we had was Springfield Armory, Springfield National Armory. Not Springfield Armory that they have today that make fine weapons, but they're not the same thing. This one's actually in Springfield, Massachusetts, and it was an armory building weapons through the Civil War, Revolutionary War. I mean, but they had to close, but there's a whole reason for that too. So anyway, so in 1917 we stopped making the P-14s for the British. So they said, well, we're going to enter the war. We have to have guns. Springfield Armory was making 1903s. They made about 800,000 of them, a little over 800,000 of them. That wasn't enough. So we had to come up with an idea. And the idea was, do we take all the manufacturing that we have, Remington and so forth, and retool it to make 1903s, or take a gun that's very similar and just rebarrel it, or rechamber it, rebarrel it for 30-06. Well, they chose to do the 30-06 thing. So what happened was Remington, Eddington, and Eddington, is that right? Well, you know where it is. And Remington and Winchester, they decided that they were just going to start making P-17s on the P-14 platform. That's why it looks very similar. It looks very similar. It has the Remington thing up there. I actually colored that one in, but it says Remington. It says US Model 1917 Remington, and then the serial number. So this was also made by Remington, so it's very similar. Has a 5-round magazine, but because the 303s have a rim on them, and the 30-06 does not, you're able to fit 6 rounds inside this magazine instead of the 5 that you put in with the 303 Brits. So, and it's the same thing, everything's the same. There's no holes for the lob sights. It's got, just like I said, it was a modified Mauser, just like the Mauser. It's got a bolt release right there. That's it right there. You pull up on that and the bolt comes out. Has the same sight. Has the same sight. I mean, everything about it's the same. I have numbers for these here, though, I believe. By the time the end of the war in 1918, 85% of the troops over in France were using the 1917 as opposed to the 03. So that's how much quicker we got the troops out there. We got these guns out there for the troops, and we got them what they needed. They both, for bayonets, had the same bayonet. It's a 17-inch bayonet. What they did was they made the bayonets for the British, and then when it was time for us to have bayonets and we stopped supplying the British, they took some of the British bayonets and stamped 1917 on them, even though, you know, so that they were for our rifles. Both rifles are cocking on pushing them in, as opposed to the cocking when you're pulling it out. The Mauser's cock when you pull it out and then you push it in. I read somewhere where the ones that cock on when you take it out, when you're in rapid fire and the bolt gets really hot, that sometimes it sticks a little bit, whereas this one won't stick. So it's advanced. It's an advanced thing. But anyway, oh, one thing I forgot to mention. Both of these rifles are from Royal Tiger. They obviously, if anybody buys rifles from Royal Tiger, you know what you're getting. You get a rifle that's going to need, unless you want to leave it the way it is, that's going to need some work. And I spent time refinishing these so that they look like they do, and you know, the stocks, etc. And I reblued. I did the rust bluing, and I rust blued all the metal to make them look the way they do. One thing I found, and you can't see it, so I don't know why I'm picking it up, but the British P-14 that I have, we know that both of these rifles came from Ethiopia. Both these rifles were sent over there by the U.S., Britain, whatever, as part of their, what do they call it, the military support or whatever. We sent over the M1s, we sent over all sorts of our old stuff for them, and then they used it. Somewhere in between, this rifle was in Iraq. And I know that it was in Iraq because there's a symbol on here, and it's kind of an upside down, it's kind of a V with an upside down 2 over it. And that's, if you look it up for the British symbols, that means that it was in Iraq. After World War I, Iraq was a protectorate of the British, and a lot of these guns went over there with the British soldiers over there for the fighting or whatever. So whatever they did, and if I'm not mistaken, it ended up like any other Western occupation of a Mideast country, and it didn't go well. So, but anyway, enough politics. So anyway, well, I'm glad to be back. You can see in my background, I started collecting helmets. So, And what else have I been doing? I've got some other rifles to do, to present. I'm working on an Arisaka 99. It's a Series 4, so it's an early war version. And I also have the last ditch rifle too, so we can compare the two. I'll put it on and we'll compare the two. I have my M1. I haven't presented my M1 yet. I'm looking forward to doing that. That's kind of like most gun collectors of mine. I love my Enfields and my Mausers, but I do like my M1. It's nice. I got a German garden gun. It's just, I bought it at the gun show for like $100, and I'm refinishing that, and it's looking pretty good too. So I'm waiting on a part to come from England. I had to buy a part in England, and I'm hoping that it's going to fit or come close so that I can make it fit. You know, so. Oh yeah, since I've been, I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is something I'm proud of. It's my gunsmith diploma. I got that since I've talked to you all last. Let's see if I can make it fall off. I'll put it back up. It won't go back up. But anyway, so yeah, I got my gunsmith diploma. I will not be applying for an FFL1. It's been very clear here where I live that guns are not allowed in my town, so that's a bad thing. But anyway, so I won't make this too long. Thank you very much, everybody that had some encouragement for me. It's got some good notes in my comments. I didn't display them all, but I did get some, and the Parkinson's is pretty stable right now. And it's day by day, and hopefully I'll be back making more videos. Anyway, thank you very much for watching.